Hello, good morning. It's Roberto Calabresi speaking from Kyoto Club. Good morning and welcome to all the attendees of this new activity, the new webinar on today is on energy, clean energy, in two parts. The first part on energy efficiency and the second part on renewable energy sources.
I will present, in those slides, what is the EU framework for energy efficiency and the strategies which are in Europe for several years now, with a strong focus on the clean energy package, and then updates on what is the EU strategy for energy efficiency under the new EU Green Deal. But maybe before starting, since I have around 20 minutes, I will just provide a quick introduction of who Schneider Electric is and who we are. So we are the leader in energy automation and digital solutions for energy efficiency and sustainabilities. So we are 26 billion euros turnover companies with a big footprint in Europe, as you can see on the screen. Our headquarters are in France. So the name Schneider sounds German, but it's a French company initially. And now we are well represented in all the world with, again, a big footprint in Europe. So just a quick introductions of also where we see the world going. Of course, to limit climate change, and to make sure we become a carbon neutral world. We have taken strong commitments to become carbon neutral by 2025 in our ecosystems. And we see, the importance of accelerating energy efficiency improvements, boosting electrifications, and decarbonizing energy sources. And in this regard, we've been pretty active in Brussels, to work on energy efficiency topics, because it has appeared, as one of the key elements of the EU strategy to become more energy efficient and to ensure Europe energy transitions towards sustainable economies. So now, talking really more in details of what we want to discuss today about the EU framework for energy efficiency. So before starting these presentations, please, and Eugenio, please interrupt me if there is any questions on the chat, or if someone is not hearing well. Don't hesitate to interrupt me, because those sometimes you don't stop in the presentation, and I want to make sure that everyone asks questions if there is something which is not clear in my presentation. So we are here today, to discuss energy efficiency framework and strategies in Europe. So basically, the EU framework for energy efficiency lies on four main pillars. The first one is the Energy Efficiency Directive. So this is a 2012 directive, which has been amended in 2018, and which sets rules and obligations for the EU for 2020 and for 2030, with targets to achieve energy efficiency. So the first target for the EU is to achieve 20% target for 2020, and the second is a mandatory target of 32.5% for 2030. And we will see next, how the EU is doing in terms of achieving those targets. The second main pillar, very important at EU level, and is regards buildings. So as you may know, buildings in Europe accounts for 40% of energy consumptions and 36% of CO2 emissions. And actually, this sector is super important, because today 75% of buildings in Europe are not energy efficient. So if Europe wants to ensure its energy transitions, tackling the issue in buildings has appeared as really critical. So today, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive is really the EU main piece of legislation to make buildings more energy efficient and to reduce their climate impact. So that's the second main pillar of the EU framework for energy efficiency. The third pillar is about eco-design and energy labeling. So I guess you all know about energy labels, which provide an indications of the energy efficiency products at the point of purchase. So for instance, in Europe, when you want to rate rent, sorry, a flat, you know, you have an indications A, B, C, D, E of the energy efficiency of the products, or of in this case of the flats. But it's the same case, you know, if you want to buy a television, for instance. And then linked to this energy labeling, you have the eco design, which is, you know, one of a very important piece of legislation from the EU, which sets mandatory requirements and minimum standards for the energy efficiency of the products. And this encompasses a large range of products, from lighting products to heaters, power transformers, freezing equipments, televisions, battery chargers. And again, a lot of them. You have more than 30 lots concerning EU products. And this is basically, you know, requirements that the EU put on manufacturers, including Schneider Electrics, to make sure the products we sell on the market are energy efficient. And then the last pillar is about how you finance energy efficiency. And I will leave mainly, you know, this part, you know, to my colleague from Schneider to describe, you know, how the EU is, you know, helping citizens, communities, and companies, you know, to do more in terms of energy efficiency. And we'll have good use case at the end of after my presentations to showcase how the EU is trying to mobilize investments for energy efficiency. And right now, you have the use of EU funds, including Horizon Europe, but also the European Strategic Investment Funds, and more than 80 billion euros has been mobilized for energy efficiency between 2014 to 2020. So now, going into the details of energy efficiency and what we have seen in the past few years. So the energy efficiency concept has been really at the core of the clean energy package. So the clean energy package was the main piece of legislation from the previous commissions to ensure Europe transitions towards sustainable economies. So it was a package of 8 different legislative proposals, and one of them was indeed the energy efficiency directive. So just I will go to this one later, but just an overview of what is the energy efficiency directive. So the energy efficiency directive was first adopted in 2012. As I explained you, it was setting a 20% target, but which were non-binding. The important part of this directive, and you can see on the screens, and I will not go into the detail of everything, but again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask me. So the main aspect of this directive was that the EU countries were obliged, you know, to set energy efficient renovations of public buildings of at least 3% per year, which means that all the buildings owned by the national authorities, not the local ones, had to renovate the building stock but at a rate of at least 3%. Today, this rate has not really been achieved in all the countries, and that's actually one of the points of discussion at EU level to make sure we reinforce this rate. The second important element of this energy efficiency directive is mandatory energy efficiency certificates, which must accompany the sale of and rental of buildings. So every time you sell or you rent buildings, you need to make sure you do an energy performance certificate, which assess the energy performance of your building. The third really important aspect is the rollout of smart meters for electricity of 200 million smart meters by 2020. This rollout has been quite effective in some countries, such as Italy, but today, again, Europe is a bit lacking behind in achieving these targets. And the fourth super important aspect is about the obligation schemes for energy companies. So this directive sets obligations for all energy companies, including utilities, to achieve yearly energy savings of 1.5% of annual sales to final consumers, which means that every year they need to achieve 1.5% energy saving. And then the last very important point of this directive is the obligations for companies to conduct energy audits every 4 years, or to deploy energy management systems to assess how energy efficient their company is. Today, these audits are deployed, but mainly on a not very good basis, since the quality of the audit has been questioned by a lot of studies. And this is one of the points the EU is considering to improve the energy efficiency of the companies. So since this framework, was not up to date with the ambition of the EU to become a leader in climate neutrality and to improve the energy efficiency of the continent, the EU has revised, as part of the clean energy package I was mentioning, this framework in a proposal of the Commission in 2016, which has been adopted in 2018. Very important point of this directive is the fact that the EU is now setting a 32.5% binding target for the EU, but not for member states, which means that the member states together must achieve this 32.5% binding targets, but they are not required, to have the same level of energy efficiency in each member state. The second important element is the extension of energy savings obligations. Actually, the ambition has been a bit decreased there because the obligation is not of 1.5% anymore, but 0.8% until 2030. Interesting element is that the metering and billing of consumer has been increased with more requirements for the deployment of meters and district heating. And then important element also for the accelerate of electricity in heating and cooling, since, as you know, electricity is the cleanest vector of energy in the world, is the fact that they have updated the primary energy factor for electricity generation, which is kind of a push for electricity for heating and cooling. So that's a quick overview of the new EU framework we have today for energy efficiency directive. And important to show you that right now, the EU is not on track to achieve the energy efficiency 20 targets. They are even quite far behind. They are 5% behind, the ambitions to reach the targets. And it's a bit, of course, a shame for the Europe, which want to become an energy efficient continent. So energy consumption basically had been gradually decreasing since the beginning of the century, but this trend has changed in 2014. So as a result, Europe consumes today more energy today than when the 2020 target was adopted in 2012. And we're even 20% away from achieving the 2030 targets. So that's something which is really concerning, as we will see next, because Europe wants to achieve climate neutrality in 2030. And I will come back, of course, to this question of achieving energy efficiency. Then I wanted to focus these presentations on the building stock, which is a very important sector to address if Europe wants to ensure its energy transitions. Again, numbers I mentioned in the beginning of these presentations on how important the building consumption is and how important it was for Europe to address energy efficiency. So, sorry, there is a bit of mistake of this slide, but same as the Energy Efficiency Directive, the EPBD was part of the new clean energy package. So you had the previous energy performance of buildings directive in 2010, which were setting requirements for the building performance and for the building codes, and which was mainly focusing on the passive solution, so the envelope side. And now this new directive has been focusing much more on the active energy efficiency technologies. So basically, when you take a buildings, you have different layers, as you know. You have the passive side and also the active side. And you need both, good envelope, good insulation of the building, but also good technical building system functioning well with automation and controls to make sure you can reduce the energy consumption of the buildings, improve the comfort, and cut greenhouse gas emission of the buildings. So that was the main elements of this revised EPBD. So the first is the fact that all large non-residential buildings must be equipped with building automation and controls by 2025. The second important element is on the acceleration of self-regulating device to control the room temperature control. Third important element is on the smart readiness indicator. So the EU is currently developing an indicator to raise the smart readiness of buildings at EU level. And third important point, which is different to energy performance, which was about e-mobility. So the Commission wanted to, and the EU then wanted to accelerate the deployment of e-mobility by putting requirements for EV charging station, electrical vehicle charging stations, mainly cabling infrastructures, in new buildings and those undergoing major renovation. So that was this new framework of the EPBD. And actually, the EPBD has been adopted in 2018, and the deadline for member states to finalize the implementation is in less than 1 month, which means that by March 10, member states will have to finalize the EPBD transposition. So very good improvement with this EPBD, which we know has paved the way to make sure buildings become more energy efficient. But the reality is that now the Europe has taken new ambitions for climate neutrality. So I don't know how much you heard about this new European Green Deal. So since 2019, sorry, we have new EU institutions and a new European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, which has announced a European Green Deal to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. So Europe now wants to become the first climate neutral continent on the planet. And basically, to achieve this, you don't have much choice. You need to increase the energy efficiency actions, the ambitions, to make sure we deliver on climate neutrality. And as I was explaining you in the previous slides, and I will show it again, because this is really important if we want to understand the strategy, but also how the EU is delivering in terms of energy efficiency actions, is that the EU right now is really far away from meeting its 2020 and 2030 targets. So on one side, the EU will, if the EU wants to become climate neutral by 2050, will have to increase its energy efficiency ambition, but also the member states will need to make sure to deliver first on the 2050 and then the 2030 targets. So as part of this Green Deal, the EU will first in March, so next month, so the Commission will propose regulations probably, which is called the climate law, to ensure climate neutrality into law. So the EU will set its goals to become the first zero carbon continent on the planet. And to achieve this, it will also revise probably by June 2021, so next year, its 2030 climate targets, including the energy efficiency targets. And from discussions we had here in Brussels, and I had with members of with representatives from the European Commissions, they acknowledge that they will have to increase the 2030 targets. So we expect a big fight, if I can say, here in Brussels, between the different institutions and the commissions who want to become climate neutral. So the member states will have to increase their ambition in terms of energy efficiency. And I have provided here a slide which show you a bit, the upcoming EU initiative as part of this EU Green Deal. And here you can see on the screens for June 2021, a revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive, which is where the EU will probably increase its EU targets for energy efficiency. So in a nutshell, this is the main EU framework for energy efficiency. I've been focusing mainly on the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which are the two main pillars for EU in terms of energy efficiency. The third aspect, of course, is about eco-design and energy labelings. And fourth aspect about financing.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Francesco Martinelli. I'm working as well for Schneider Electric, but I'm located in Italy. So I work for the technical support in the construction building team. So my main job is to give support to clients on our technologies, but in parallel to that, my team is carrying out some research project financed by the European Commission. So we're going to discuss about this framework today. And the main focus we are exploiting on this research project is sustainability and innovation. So I think it's very related to what was shown before and the topic of today's presentation. So the agenda of today, we're gonna talk about the framework Horizon 2020. So very brief introduction on what is Horizon 2020 and our participation as Schneider Electric Italy. So we participate in this research project as a national entity for Schneider. So there are also other Schneiders in Europe participating in this project, such as Schneider France or Spain. And then I'm gonna finish my presentation with one example of project, the project Thermos, which is gonna finish at the end of this month. So you're gonna get some preliminary results, and I'm gonna show you a bit what is the project about. What is Horizon 2020? Is a framework of project that was started in 2014, and it lasted for 7 years. So the European Commission wanted a framework of financing to companies, industries, universities, SMEs that was big in size, so 80 million euros. That was easy to be access to funds, and that was leading to innovation and research. So these were the main pillars of this research project framework and financing. So a lot of money allocated to this project for a long period. As I said, the objective was that to couple research and innovation. So you don't participate in these projects alone, but you work with a consortium of companies. So companies and universities collaborate together. So you bring together expertise that are in the universities, in the research institutes, together with the technical knowledge of technical partners and small enterprises. And you try to tackle those societal challenges, such as energy, environment, health, IT, robotics, that are very important for Europe as it is now. So a very strong emphasis on science, on industrial leadership, and the final goal is to try to break down those barriers that are created by the single national markets in Europe by linking together different companies and the different partners that are all around Europe. So minimum requirements for these projects is to create a consortium with the 3 different countries represented in the consortium. So very looking forward the unification of Europe as a single market as well. And in particular to become the most strong market in the world for knowledge, research and innovation. So what are the factors that are most important and the evaluation parameters in the Horizon 2020 frameworks? So approximately every 6 months, the European Commission in the Horizon 2020 frameworks was releasing some calls, so calls of proposal, so the companies could apply, and the request for this call was to bring forward ideas that were innovative in application and the service solution offered. And also these ideas needs to be feasible all around Europe, as I said before. So to create a single market and a European context, not only in a very specific region or countries, but to be spread all around Europe. And also another very important factor was the sustainability. So all the projects need to be financially capable of going alone once the project financing is finishing. So one project can last 2, 3, 4 years, but after that time, the European Commission wants to ensure that there are some exploitable results, some outputs from the project that can be positive for all Europe without any more funding. So these calls, every time we, together with our partner, we submit a request of proposal. These proposals are evaluated on 3 different topics. The first one is excellence. So how clarity and pertinent is the project that you are showing compared to the objectives of the call. So one example, we receive the European Commission present a call on residential technologies. So we answer together with other technology partner and university to this call in 2015, sorry, and so we answered with a project, a structured project on how to test upcoming technologies in the framework of different climates in Europe. So European Commission evaluated this project with a high level of excellence as it was clearly responding to the objectives that were requested in the call. Then a second important point is the impact, how the solution that you are presenting to the European Commission in as an answer to their call, how is it going to impact the European market in the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years. So very important to show number and expected impact related to the work program that you are presenting. And finally, the quality and efficiency of the implementation. So being this a long time project, you need to show the European Commission that your work is going to be sound and clear, that you already know what you're going to do, what every partner is going to do, and in which timing. So also the timing is very important to be shown. Okay, why is Schneider Electric Italy participating in this project? So first of all, we want to develop our applications that are futuristic. So we have a framework where we can test this solution to boost energy efficiency and sustainability that then we can present on the Italian market, on the European market. Another very important point to participate in these R&D projects is myself and my colleagues, we joined Schneider starting with this project. So we have a very broad view on what the company is doing, both on technical side and on a commercial side and as a vision side. So we learn a lot and then we can move towards other more strategic objectives inside the company. We also develop some pilot cases. So we go in real buildings and in real application to test what we are developing in these R&D projects. So they become study cases and synergic showcases for the business. So for example, we have a house from one of our partners here very close to our location in Italy, where we can take clients to show our domestic solution. And finally, we together with our marketing teams here in Italy, we use the output of the projects for dissemination and to show how Schneider Electric is bringing forward the concept of sustainability and the greener aspect of the economy. So some key figures, I'm going to show you some key figures. We started with these projects in 2012, so 8 years ago. We have completed approximately, we have completed 6 projects with very successful results. And we have at the moment 6 projects running. So these are the projects that has been funded. So European Commission accepted our proposal, the proposal we sent together with our partners. But behind that, there is a big work of creating of proposals to the calls. So for example, in 2019, we worked on 12 proposals and we have the 3 of these funded. So it's a 1 out of 4 proposals submitted, which is a very high success rate for this type of projects in Europe. So talking about numbers, we received in 8 years more than 4.2 million euros funded by European Commission directly, and which includes effort for more than 500 person months. So myself and my colleagues were receiving this money to carry out the work done in the projects. So very briefly, in which part? So this is our EcoStruxure architecture. So EcoStruxure is a very important concept for Schneider Electric. So we wanted to have a link between all the different strategic sector of the company and the different level of application in a possible client or in a possible site. So in this EcoStructure architecture, the European projects are mainly focusing historically on the building side with the two domain EcoStructure, power and building. So we bring forward solution of building automation and of power monitoring in the building sectors, both residential and industrial, as you will see later. And for what concern the EcoStructure industry, we applied the EcoStructure plant for a project that we just won. So we just got funded a project based on digging and mining, so digitalizing mining. Let's see the application segments. So we focus all around the city with different projects. So we started with the project on sport, so efficiency in sport plants, stadium, gyms. So this was the first project we participated. Then we got project on healthcare, so hospitals and a shopping mall. So how to make hospitals more efficient and how to make a shopping mall more efficient and comfortable and secure for the occupants. Then lately we really focused our effort on buildings and residential sector. So we had 4 projects, 3 financed by European Commission and 1 financed by the local region where we are based here. And here we applied a different level in the residential sector, our solution. Also projects related to the integration of the grid. So you all know about smart grids, building energy monitorings included in the grid, included in the city. So these 3 projects are really focusing on this topic. And finally, for what concerns the building aspects, we also received funded for a project called Positive. It's a very recent one. This is a project on smart grid. So we have 2 very advanced cities in Europe, which are representative of the advancement of smart grids. And so we are bringing our solution for renovation of historical buildings in these cities. And finally, as I said before, the first project we got for industrial sector, the project Digit on mining and digitalization of mining plants. So these are all the projects we have achieved, and some of them are closed, as I said before, some of them are running. The 3 on the left, I Become a Positive and Digit, were just achieved this last year. So we are very interested in the working in this field, and we are putting a lot of effort in it. So let's start with the example of application. So the project Thermos, as I said before. So here there is another video that is introducing the project. I will describe it for you. Thermos was is a 4-year project that is finishing this at the end of this month. The concept of Thermos was to make a house ready to be integrated in the district heating by the usage of some heat exchanger on a bidirectional way, and to test in this framework some new technologies such as heat pumps or micro CHP, which are boosting the possibility of exchanging energy towards the district heating, as it is happening now with the photovoltaic, for example. So the houses with the photovoltaics are no more only consumer, but are prosumers, so producer and consumers. And we were studying how that will be, if that will be possible to do the same with heating solution when there is a district heating. So we'll leave the link to the video as well. So the project was focused on taking some technologies and installing in some different houses around Europe. So we choose different demo sites in different climate location and different typologies of buildings as well. We went from very small houses like the one here you're seeing in Riga to some very big houses in UK or to a district in Spain. So for the houses in Riga, there were 4 different houses, very similar, close to each other. So we decided to install different technology packages in each house to test the difference of production and possible exchange to the district heating. So the first technology package that was installed was a micro CHP combined with a system of smart thermostatic radiator valves. So the micro CHP, for the ones you know, who knows, is producing at the same time electricity and hot water. So this could be could make a house a prosumer, so both a producer and consumers at the same time for electricity and heating. The second case of application was a gas absorption heat pump combined with a smart thermostatic radiator valve and a gas boiler for the domestic hot water during summer, while the third technology package was an air source heat pump combined with a domestic hot water tank and the smart for a buffer and a smart thermostatic radiator valve system. So the houses were provided with these technologies, and they were studied. They all had the pre-existing gas boiler, very inefficient one. So for a certain period of time, we studied the energy consumption of each building, and then we changed the technology, and then we studied again the energy consumption, and the results were quite good. We saw a very big, as you can see on the bottom left here, for the different technology package, we saw energy savings up to 33%, depending on the technology package, and very good CO2 emission savings. And also a very important reduction of the gas consumption on an annually base, in this case due to the optimization which was done through the smart thermostatic valve system in the houses. So we could demonstrate that a combination of technologies is the most efficient way to save energy inside the building and also to decrease the gas consumption, for example, in different typology of buildings. So this work that I'm showing now is focused on the Riga residential houses. The same analysis has been done for the district in Spain and the two bigger building in UK, and also results for those cases were really positive. As a Schneider Electric in this project, we participated as a provider of a monitoring architecture, because as I said, we were monitoring the consumption before and after the installation of the technology packages. So we installed a monitoring architecture based on open protocols in order to boost the replicability, and we applied both wired and wireless technologies and sensors. So you can see on the top, connected to our automation server modules, weather station, electricity meters, heat meters, which were the ones that were measuring the real consumption from in the boiler room, for example, while on the bottom, we were also assessing the thermal quality, indoor quality for the environment, because it's easy to decrease the energy consumption, but you also needed to take care of what is the air quality for the occupants of the buildings. And all this solution was installed locally and then was communicating through secure protocols to a central server, which is based on our EcoStruxure building operation technology. And from this central server, we could give data to the different other partners. So we were putting in communication all the actors in the project, adapting with a solution which is very easily adaptable for small buildings or very big districts. So we were getting data from different type of demonstrator. And as I said before, thanks to the usage of open protocols, the solution can be very easily replicated to other places in Europe or in the world. We also created a front-end interface for the users to check out what is the energy consumption at every time and the accumulated, for example, energy that they are consuming over a period. So here's some example again for Riga. From the boiler room, you can see the total energy consumption, the progressive energy consumption of the building. Okay, to get to a conclusion for this, what are the next steps? And let's make a focus on what was the today presentation. In Horizon 2020, Turkey participated as an associated country. So there are two types of countries of figures that are participating in a European project. There are the resident countries and the associated countries. So, for example, Italy, being part of the EU, is a resident country, while there are some other additional countries who can participate. There is also, for example, Canada for some project, and Turkey did really well in their participation, as it was the 4th out of 16 associated countries for participation rank and budget share. In total, Turkish companies, universities, and research and R&D institutes got approximately 177 million euros net contribution from EU on these projects. And to go to the future, the next when Horizon 2020 will finish, it will start Horizon Europe, which is an ambitious 100 billion R&D program, in which participation of Turkey is under confirmation now. So stay tuned. And I wanted to give this data in order to maybe raise some interest from the audience on the possible participation in this project, as also Schneider Electric, but also Kyoto Club is participating in this project. So it's a very good way to get financed, to finance the R&D in your company or in your institution, and it's also very important place where to learn cooperation and to learn how the market is going and what is going to be the future of European and global energy sector in particular, or building sector. Okay, this was my presentation. I apologize again for not being able to show the videos. I'm gonna paste the videos in the chat. I hope the presentation was interesting for you, and I'm gonna be available for question if anybody from the audience has some.
Okay, Marco, thanks a lot. It's Eugenio speaking now. We have a couple of questions already from the participants. The first one is, if you or Jules can answer, maybe you. Could you give more application examples for heat district with PV panels? Especially, I care more about high residential buildings applications. And this participant thanks you for everything. And the other question is if you could share again your contact details. Thanks a lot.
Okay, for the last question, I will go back to my initial slide, so you can have my contact there. And I don't know if in the end you wish to share the presentation with the audience. That will be. Oh, there are no contact here. Okay.
Yes, I will. I repeat. I don't know if Roberto already told the participants. By the way, the recorded videos of the webinars and the PPTs and the files will be available for free on the web page of the project on our website on kyotoclub.org.
Eugenio, maybe I can address on the second question on the contact details. I can put it on my next slides for the renewables part.
Okay.
And actually, on district heating and PV, I have an example of my use case is in the slides on the renewables part of the webinar. So I don't know if the person who has the questions will stay for the second part, but I will give an example of solar PV on industrial buildings and how, thanks to that, we managed to do district heating.
Okay, no, I think we can wait for the second part, which will start in 10 minutes or 15 minutes after a small break. So yes, we can leave it for the second part. If the participant who asked the question will not be able to participate, I mean,
I can share with him the slides, no problem about it.
Yes, you can share it in the slides, and the participant can see the recorded webinars or download the presentation in just maybe in 1 week. It will be ready. So I think we can leave it for the second part on renewables.
Okay. if you wish, I can give an answer on what was the case for the Thermos project. So
yes,
in
please.
in this project, for example, for the use case of Spain, there was an installation of photovoltaic, and so in order to being in Spain, so having a quite high solar radiation during the day, they and having a quite big district. So the Spanish case was a residential district with more than 500 houses, self-managed and self-sufficient from the grid. So everything was from the heating perspective, everything was produced in a boiler room. So they had different technologies, biomass boilers, gas boilers, and for the Thermos project, we decided to install an electric heat pump. So the electric heat pump was using the electricity produced by the photovoltaic in the not peak consumption moments, so during the day when probably there is no so much request of heating, and then this the electricity was used in the heat pump to produce hot water, and then the hot water was stored in a big tank. And also in the same district heating circuit, which was quite big. Imagine if for 500 houses is quite a big pipe, so the amount of hot water in the pipes was already quite high. So with the photovoltaic and the heat pump combination, we were capable of saving approximately 20% of gas consumption, because we were covering mostly all the heating losses that were going on during the day. So the heating losses were going on due to this continuous circulation of the water in the pipe, which is quite a high heat consumption in the circuit. And with the installation of the photovoltaic combined to the heat pump, we were able to cover all that heat losses for free, because it's energy coming from the sun. So that was our case that we experienced in the Thermos project.
So welcome everyone, and hello Chiara. I see that you are on the phone. So again, I'm Jules Cardio from Schneider Electric. So same people who did the presentation then during the first part. So representing Schneider to the European institutions here in Brussels. So just a quick short feedback: Schneider Electric is the leader in the digital transformation of the energy systems. And so basically we provide solutions all across the value chains, from buildings, industry, data centers, to make sure those sectors are more energy efficient, sustainable, and consume less energy. So during this second part, I will present you the EU strategy and frameworks when it comes to renewables, with one of also a best practice we have as Schneider Electric in Finland. And then Chiara will present you also the strategy as applied in Italy and a best practice from Italy. As highlighted during the previous part of the conversations, the EU, has adopted during the previous term, so between 2014 and 2020, what we called the Clean Energy Package, which was a package of 8 legislative measures aimed to ensure Europe transitions towards sustainable economies, to accelerate energy efficiency, and to boost renewables. So we have moved from a previous framework of renewables, which lies mainly in the Renewables Energy Directive. So the original directive was from 2009, sorry, and required the EU to fulfill at least 20% of its total energy needs with renewables by 2020. And of course, this target was not mandatory, but was the sum of the individual national targets. So each EU member state has its own European 2020 targets, and they are different from one another. So of course, for instance, Sweden has for thousands of years, I've always, put renewables capacity at the core of its energy mix, and didn't have the same ambition of country like Hungary, which where the energy mix depends less on renewables. So they are different targets, but the attainment of those targets aim to achieve 20% of total energy needs of Europe's based on renewables. So right now we have 11 of the EU member states which have already hit their 2020 targets. Bulgaria, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Italy as well, Hungary, Lithuania, Romania, and Sweden. But we are probably going to fall short of achieving the 2020 targets. I will come back later to that. So first target from 2009, achieve 20% of renewables in the energy needs of the EU by 2020. The second target and the updated target was adopted as part of the Clean Energy Package and entered into force in December 2018. And member states have until next year, 2021, to finalize the implementation of the directive. And the main element is that it sets out the obligations of abiding renewable energy target for the EU of at least 32% by 2030. So just for you to know, the original position of the Commission was something between 27 to 30%. And because of pressure from the Parliament in particular, who are pushing for a 35% target and even 45% for center and political groups like the Greens, they have increased the targets to 32%. And to make sure the EU's delivers on this, as part of the Clean Energy Package, another piece of legislation was also adopted, which is called the Governance Regulations, which is basically the umbrella legislations to make sure that countries delivers. So the countries had until end of 2019, so end of last year, to present their national energy and climate plans, which basically outline how they are going to meet the different targets set out in the Clean Energy Package, including the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Renewable Energy Directive. And right now, some member states have not submitted yet their national energy and climate plans, including a country like France and Germany and Bulgaria and Croatia as well. So the Commission right now, is putting pressure on member states to say, okay, now member states, you need to present your plans on how you are going to achieve those targets. And here you can see on these slides how the countries are doing to achieve their 2020 targets. So as you know, as I explained you, the countries have different targets, and all those targets together aims the EU to achieve 20% of energy from renewable sources. So as you can see, countries like Sweden have already exceeded their targets. So the target of Sweden was 49% of renewables in the energy mix. And you have countries which, have a smaller targets, but who also achieve it, like Hungary and also Cyprus and and Czechia, and also Italy. And other countries, are quite away from their targets, including France, a country like France. So right now, the slow pace of development means that the EU might not meet its 2020 targets. So we are right now between 18 to 20%, and EU might fall short of meeting its 2020 targets. So might fall short of meeting the 2020 targets, but also that means that we might be away from achieving the 2030 targets. So this slide to show you in the light of this renewable energy directive, what is the gross electricity generation from renewable source in Europe, and how what is the different ways of wind power, hydropower, and solar powers in the electricity generation, from renewables. So today, the electricity generation from renewable energy sources contributing more than 1/4 of the total gross electricity consumptions. Hydropower is the most important source, followed closely by wind power and then solar power. And the other renewable energy sources will represent 20% of the gross in electricity generation from renewables. include electricity from wood, biogas, renewable waste, and geothermal energy. So that's basically the different mix from renewables we have today in Europe, and wind power and solar power are expected to increase since we see increased capacities in a lot of countries, including in north of Europe, and the fact that the price of those solutions of solar powers has decreased considerably. And for instance, at Schneider, we believe that the price of solar and storage together means that by 2025, it will be cheapest than a barrel of oil. So really solar and storage becoming, of course, the energy of the future. So we had this revision of the Renewable Energy Directive in 2018 with the EU ambitions to become a global leader in renewable energy sources. And one of the options which has been considered and which has been discussed at the very important event yesterday in Brussels with the European Commissioner for Energy is, can we achieve 100% renewables-based energy systems by 2050? So that's one of the main issues and point of discussions today in terms of what is the EU strategy for renewables. But first, we will need to meet the 2030 targets. And as I explained, we might fall short of achieving these targets. And we also need to achieve the 2030% targets. The 2030 target, sorry, which is of 32%. So this is already, big to achieve, and we are not on track at the moment at EU level to achieve this strategy and these targets. So now I will go into details of what is this Renewable Energy Directive, which is, again, the main pillar of the EU strategy for renewables. So first of all, we have with this new renewables targets, really important measures to accelerate self-consumptions. So the directive has enshrined in EU law the right for consumers to produce electricity using solar panels and to sell any excess productions to the grid and get a market price for it. So you have no discrimination of disproportionate charges. The electricity behind the meter is not charged except for installations larger than 32 kilowatts. The risk of, if there is a risk of financial instability, and if there are electricity that benefits from support scheme from public support. Also the right from remunerations when feeding into the grids. And another point I will come back later is really the fact that this directive is trying to make self-consumers active in the markets with power purchase agreements, peer-to-peer tradings, and other possibilities of DMI, so demand response. So that's basically the main measures of this Renewable Energy Directive to make sure we can incentivize self-consumptions. It's still, and not enough, honestly, if you want to really incentivize self-consumptions. But this is the first step from the EU to say, okay, now we need to enable self-consumptions from renewables. Chiara, did you have any questions? Because I heard some noise on your line, but...
No, sorry. It
No?
was
Okay.
just
Sorry, no problem about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there are no questions, I'm moving to the other slides of this Renewable Energy Directive. And I also wanted to mention the Electricity Directives, which sets measures, to enable the creation of local energy communities. So and apologize to that because I don't know to which extent people on the phones are aware of those local energy communities. I guess most of you are, but the fact is that in Europe, those energy communities are developing quite at a rapid pace and at large scale in some countries. And the objective of this directive and of the EU was to say, okay, now we need to enable those energy communities, to really become active consumers, not only, to generate electricity, but then to sell it into the grid. So what these renewable energy directives are set as principle is that energy communities are entitled to generate, to sell, and to store renewable energies. So which means that the final consumers can participate in the renewable energy community. That's the first right. The second right is the right to produce, to consume, to store, and to sell renewable energy. And to do that, the member states have the obligations to remove regulatory and administrative barriers. So I think we need to remain cautious on that point, because this is just an obligations, but then it will be up to the member states to really enforce this directive. And important point to mention is that when it's a directive, the member states have some room for maneuver in terms of implementations. So we'll need to remain cautious on how well implemented these points on removing regulatory and administrative barriers will enter into force at member state level. The second important part on the fact that the EU has tried to incentivize local energy communities is part of the electricity market directive. So this was another pillar of the clean energy package, aimed to adapt, modernize the rules for electricity market in Europe, and you had provision on electricity sharings. So first of all, it prescribes what we can call citizen energy communities, which can be natural person, SMEs, or local authorities, including municipalities. And this directive, which kind of echo the provision in the Renewable Energy Directive, but in a more precise and ambitious way, to say that those communities located in the same buildings or in the neighborhoods can trade, rent, or purchase their own electricity distribution network. And this is very important in correlations with the Renewable Energy Directive, because this is, how you also incentivize energy communities. And for those communities, the network charge will apply by default, will not apply by default when electricity is consumed on locations. So important aspects on that is that the Commission estimates that by 2030, more than 50 gigawatt of wind and more than 50 gigawatt of solars could be owned by local energy communities. So that's a huge part, of the renewable energy sources which come from local energy communities, which, again, confirm this trend and vision we have actually at Schneider, that we are going to move to a much more decentralized energy systems, where we have a shift, away from the centralized generations and with much more decentralized energy systems, in particular, thanks to the integration of renewables and the accelerations of the integration of microgrids. So that's the second important part of this directive on the measures for energy communities. And then, last but not least, important element on the measure for public purchase agreements. So if you don't know what is a public purchase agreements, I guess you know, but I will go quickly on that. Is direct contract with an energy generators towards the purchase of renewable electricity. And one of the biggest buyer of that is the corporate PPAs. And I guess you heard recently, and for instance, Google claim being, the largest corporate buyers of renewable electricity. So they have they have signed, a new PPAs to make sure that their facilities run only on renewable electricity. So that's an important part, the PPAs, to help secure renewable energy investments and reduce deployment cost. And under this revised directive, so the Renewable Energy Directive again, the member states have the obligations to facilitate the uptake of renewable PPAs. So first, they must access administrative and regulatory barriers. They make sure that there is no disproportionate procedure and charges, and they must make sure that they have, under the national energy climate plans, which I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, they must have policies and measures to boost PPAs. And again, as a part of these PPAs, they have new rules under the Renewable Energy Directives to the guarantees of origins in tracking renewables electricities. So the guarantees of origins, the GOES, can provide traceabilities for electricity, which is very important, especially when the electricity is going to benefit from public supports. And they enable, the companies which invest in renewable electricity to make sure, the electricity indeed is coming from renewables and not, from fossil fuels like coal. So that's a very important point, to make sure renewables integrations accelerates in Europe. thanks to those public purchase agreements. And I will end this part on the fact that coming back to the Green Deal, the EU wants to really become a global leader in renewables. And here you have a quote from the new European Commission President, explain that they want to become climate neutral, and to do that you will have to revise the all 2030 targets. So first, Commission wants to be climate neutral, but also want to achieve 50% of CO2 emission reductions. And that's something very important for all of you to understand, is that if we want to achieve these targets, we need to increase the energy efficiency targets and the renewable targets. If we don't do that, we will never achieve 50% of CO2 emission reductions by 2030. So you have some strategy as part of this Green Deal, the smart sector integration strategy, the strategy for offshore wind. I will go quickly on that, and because we don't have a lot of details at this stage from the Commission. And I'm happy to address some of your questions, because we had a meeting yesterday with the European Commissioner for Energy. So I'm happy to address your question later. I wanted to go towards a use case we have in Finland to show you, the potential of integrations of renewables. So we have this use case of Lidl in Finland, which is the largest industrial microgrids in Finland. So this is the buildings that use 100% of renewables with solar panels. And thanks to that, we have a CO2 reduction goal of 40% by 2020. So thanks to, I will show you a short video. I don't think you can hear the sound, but you have subtitles which explain you a bit what is this project.
Yes, we can see the video but not hear the sounds anyway.
Yeah, no problem. So quickly, and then I will give the floor back to Chiara, because I think we should focus then on best practice. But this is to give you a third overview of what is, an energy efficient commercial industrial microgrid based on 100% renewable energy sources. So we basically, deployed a microgrid operating on 100% renewable energy sources with 1,600 parallel solar power plants on the building roofs, also a battery energy storage systems. And thanks to the cogeneration of heating and coolings, the heat recovers from the refrigeration equipments, enable us, to participate in local demand response markets and to heat more than 500 private homes around these industrial microgrids. And we will cut the CO2 emissions by 40% and use 50 less percent energy than current 2 operational centers. So that's to give you, really a screenshot of how of that we have already, very good use case of renewable integrations and microgrids on big industrial microgrids, and how this is by doing that kind of use case, that we are really going to decarbonize Europe's by accelerating the deployment of renewable energy sources, and the Lidl center being one of them in Europe.
Okay, thank you. So hello everybody. Thank you, Drew. So just some few words to introduce myself. So my name is Chiara and I work in A022, that is based in Rome, Italy. And A022 is a company created by the effort of two big ecologist associations in 2004, that are Kyoto Club and Lega Ambiente. We in A022 preserves in our core business and policy, of course, the values of these two big associations, and me, I work in the sustainable department, so I'm involved in this moment in a project, in a main project of forestation in Italy, national forestation, to mitigate the climate change. So thanks to Jules, because it was very interesting. Welcome also from my part to this clean energy module. I will show you the mainly the Italian case, and I'll try to give you the main information basically on how Italian legislation collects the European directives and carry it out at a local level. Because as Jules said, of course, we have to follow the main framework, European framework. That's why I want to start just from these slides, because it's important to me to understand that, of course, the EU objectives are important, and I want to focus on the main aims of the EU energy policies that, as Jules says, are a lot, but one of the most important to me is to promote the one that said that promote the development of new and renewable forms of energy to better align and integrate climate change goals into the new market design. Of course, it is important, but how to do that? So we have one legal basis, that is the article of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, that said that some areas of the energy policy are shared competence. What does it mean? It means that of course, it is important to give the autonomy to member states as Italy, and the right to determine the condition of exploiting its energy resources. So it's choice between different energy sources and the general structure of its energy supply. And I think it is very important to us, because of course we have kind of the same goals. Of course, we are going to the same direction, but in different ways. This tries to make you understand that the path is made by different steps, of course, also for the Europe part, because at the beginning, let's say in 2014, the first policy agenda said, okay, we have at the European level to achieve the following goals for by the 2030, and it was the one that we are talking is of course about renewable energy. And it was an increase, underline an increase to 27% of renewable energies in energy consumptions. But then something has changed, because the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive accelerated Europe's transition towards clean energy, creating a new target of 32% energy from renewable sources at EU level for 2030. So also from Europe, we saw that there were different steps to reach the goal and to improve also the goal. So the Italian goals actually for 2030, we know that we have different levels: greenhouse gases reduction, energy efficiency, but regarding the renewables, as we said and Jules said, the European Union has to achieve the 32%, and Italy, as Jules said, just the 17% that we have already achieved. So of course it is important to understand what is the target and the binding target in this case, and how we can use renewables to achieve new target. So it is important to give some numbers also to understand what is the state of art in Italy. For the electricity sector, in 2017, approximately the 35% of the national gross production came from renewable energy sources. This means that, of course, a lot of national gross production came from renewable sources, and the most important one, as Jules said, from the European level, is the hydro one. The 35% of the total electricity production from renewable energy sources was from the hydro one. Then there was the solar sources, solar source 23%, bioenergy 19%, wind power was 17%, and geothermal 6%. I think we can say that, as Jules presented before, the slide is kind of the same. We have the same, not the same percentage, but the same amount of renewable energy utilized, but at Italian level. So also the thermal sector is important. Of course, it was slightly less than 20% of total energy consumption that came from renewable sources, based on the data of 2017. We can say that approximately 11.2 million tons of oil equivalent was consumed of energy, of course, was consumed by renewable energy sources. There were mainly through individual boilers, stoves, fireplace, solar panels, heat pumps, and geothermal heat. And the rest was through district heating systems powered by mainly biomass. And some other numbers. The renewable source most used in 2017 for thermal consumption was solid biomass. And another thing that instead heat pumps that are also pretty important, but the contribution of bioliquid, biogas, geothermal, and solar sources are still limited. So we have to do more in this sector for the thermal consumption. And for regarding the transport sector, that is of course very important, 1.2 million tons of biofuel were released for consumption, mainly biodiesel. So this is important as well. Something more, yes. So as I said, so we did a lot to reach the goal of 2020. We know that there is the 2030 targets, and we are already thinking about the 2050, because of course it is important to organize and set out the targets. And so Italy is making an effort, of course, to equip itself with planning tools aiming at identifying objective policies and measures consistent with the European framework to improve also the environmental sustainability, security, and accessibility of energy costs. As Jules said, of course, we have to create a plan, for an integrated plan for energy and climate at a national level, and we presented it I think like on December, but to arrive to the integrated plan for energy and climate at a national level, we had before the National Energy Strategy that was adopted in November 2017. That was not the point of arrival, of course, but the starting point for the preparation of this integrated national plan. I think it is important because, of course, it set out new target, and also because it underlines not only the mission to to improve renewable energy sources, to enhance renewable energy sources, but also integrate this approach also with environmental and socioeconomic sustainability. So we, of course, have to reach the goal, but to pay attention also to the environmental and socioeconomic sustainability. Yes. So the main element of this plan for energy and climate that was presented to the European Union said that, of course, on one side, the evolution of energy system and its related targets would be pursued, but how preserving environmental assets like air quality, landscape, land use, and on the other side, citizens and businesses will be involved in the transition process, as Jules said with his example, no? Right? So promoting self-consumption, energy communities, monitoring energy bills, and competitiveness of enterprises. Take into account that we have the goal to promote at the national level, so in Italy, the diffusion and the integration of renewable energy. We can do that while minimizing environmental impact. Just to give you an example, how to do that, giving priority to photovoltaic plants on building instead of the area, no, on the soil, to preserve the soil. Use the heat pumps to avoid particulate emission, create advanced biofuels to use waste, and so to recycle and to create new biofuels. So it is important, of course, for Italy to follow the evolution of the energy system and its related target, but don't forget to preserve environmental assets and sustainability. Yes. So in Italy, we have, as I said, different way to arrive to reach this goal. We know that, of course, we have to be more competitive. It means aligning Italian energy prices with European ones to benefit of both companies and consumers, no? Right? And create also new employment opportunities in the sector of renewables, be more sustainable, like contributing to decarbonization in line, of course, with the long-term targets of Paris Agreement on climate change. More secure, improving the security of energy supply while ensuring its flexibility. They are all linked, of course, with the strategy at the European level, but they are included in our national strategy, in our integrated national plan. The Italian government said, okay, we have to reach this goal. How to do that? We create the incentives to enhance the use of renewable energy sources. Thanks to this ministry decree that was launched in 2019, July, we have the government, Italian government, decided to promote, thanks to a financial support, the diffusion of plants for the production of electricity. The production of electricity from small, medium, and large-sized renewable sources. So which kind of renewable sources are incentivized by this decree? So the plants that can benefit from the incentives are newly built photovoltaic, onshore wind turbine, hydro plants, and for the purification gas. Let's say that the decree divides the plants that can access the incentives into 4 groups based on the type. So, as I said, I put also the biography. So, of course, there are numbers inside. So, even if it's Italian, you can read it. In this slide, I just want to underline that, of course, there are these 4 groups. Group A that includes plants newly built onshore wind farms and newly constructed photovoltaics. Group A2 that includes newly constructed photovoltaic system, but photovoltaic system whose modules are installed to replace roof of buildings and rural buildings on which there is the Eternit or asbestos. It means that you can remove this dangerous material from the roof and construct the photovoltaic system instead. So this is very important. I mean, there was one incentive in the past that was more efficient, we can say, but it's still one step towards the photovoltaic system. The group B includes plants that are newly built hydroelectric plants, and the group C is about onshore wind turbines and hydropower with residual gas from purification process. So as I said before, if you want more information about it, I use the biography that is sometimes in Italian, sometimes in English, but the numbers are readable for everybody. So just some information about best practices in Italy, because I think it is important also to speak about the municipalities that in Italy have done a lot of steps in this direction, and I decided to talk about the municipalities in Italy because, as you might know, Italy is one of the countries ahead in the world in this perspective. And with the greatest opportunity, we are called City of Sun, something like this. And of course, Italy is long and we have different sources depending on the region where you are. So we have widespread and different renewable resources from north to the south, which of course can be enhanced and integrated in a local development perspective. I decided to pick some example from the Legambiente report. It's a report that gives the opportunity to highlight the municipality and what they have done by themselves to improve renewable energy sources in their area. So the numbers are fundamental in the energy field, and they are even more important today that we need to stop the increase in the planet temperature. No? Right? In Italy, for example, we must triple by at least triple by 2030 the 20 gigawatt installed of solar system, and so make investment to reduce the energy consumption and the CO2 emission. The report collects the results the municipality have achieved and how. I just want to give you some numbers just to let you understand that in the data, I think there are of 2017 or 2018, but we can say that in almost 8,000 Italian municipalities were installed renewable energy sources. 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, there were 356. It means that a lot of steps toward this the renewable energy source system were made. So we can say that at least one photovoltaic system is installed in each Italian municipality. Almost 7,000 solar thermal system and 1,500 mini hydroelectric system, in particular in the central north, because we have in the central north part of Italy a lot of rivers and lake. And then instead in the center south we have wind turbines, more wind. So another best practice I want to show you today is about a cooperative in Rome. If you have ever been in Rome, you know that one of the main problem is the traffic jam. Rome is big, plenty of tourists, plenty of people, but the traffic jam is very on a high level. And as you might know, the air quality is not at a high level because of the pollution made by the car. That's why this cooperative of taxi, decide to move to the electric mobility, thanks to the collaboration with two leading companies in the car production market. So they have chosen to buy a hybrid car, thanks to the partnership with Toyota, covering today about 80% of cars belonging to the total amount of members, taxi drivers. They cover, let's say, in a working day, 120 kilometers, 130 kilometers, and adopted a hybrid car, of course, allow them also to have an economic saving. But the positive effect, it was not only from the economic point of view, but also from the environmental point of view, because of course there was an important amount of CO2 expresses of course in ton of CO2 equivalent avoided by the use of these electric taxis. 153 ton of CO2 avoided per year. And also what they did, they decided to put the photovoltaic system in the cooperative headquarters. It means that the cooperative headquarters, as this built in 2012, the photovoltaic system on the shelter of the internal parking with 5 columns that powered by the photovoltaic systems to not only recharge the taxes, but also to cover the administrative office's electrical needs, with also the technical laboratory and multimedia room of the cooperative headquarters. It means that they became not 100% renewables, but almost, let's say. So I would say that even if we are looking toward our goals that will be always more important, it is important the way in which we want to reach the goals, and it is important also to give voice and underline all the efforts made by the local at a local level, let's say. So even from small municipalities, and Italy is plenty of small municipalities, and even from cooperatives that want to help to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, to enhance the energy efficiency, but more than other to use renewable energy sources, because we are going to the same path. We are on the same page on that. So that's why I choose to give you this best practice in Italy that are small and local, because Italy it's a local, at local level is it's has a lot of small reality, and that's why I decide to show you that. So I think I finished. Yes, thank you for your attention. Thank you for Jules, because he gave me the opportunity to talk more about Italy, based, of course, on the European framework, legal framework. And thank you for the attention to everybody.